This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Paul Hansen. Thurley, Ruxton by Philip Verrill Mighels. Chapter 7. A Cinderella Proposition. When Thurley, complying with the Major's request, stepped briskly into his army headquarters to find herself confronted by a tall, grey-eyed woman from the palace on Fifth Avenue, she was merely a trifle surprised. There was no recognition in the fleeting glance with which she met the scrutiny that Alice bent upon her. "Ah, here we are, by Pollux, yes," said the Major in his mildest artillery utterance. "Alice, permit me to present Miss Thurley Ruxton. Yes, Miss Ruxton, my niece, Miss Van Kirk. Interested, wish to meet you. Have a little chat. I'll leave you here together." He disappeared and closed the door as Thurley turned to gaze inquiringly at the visitor whose name she would never forget. Alice met her astonished look with an arch and radiant smile. Not only had she instantly recognized the girl who had driven Stuyvesant's car, but also with equal promptness had her mind conceived an extraordinary plan. "Miss Ruxton," she said, advancing with outstretched hand, "I am exceedingly glad to meet you again. You hardly knew me for a moment." Thurley took the proffered hand almost mechanically. She flushed with colour, which instantly heightened her beauty as she wondered what the meeting might imply. I remember now," she faltered, perhaps a trifle embarrassed by the thought of thus being discovered, revealed in her real capacity and personality. "Our meeting before was quite informal," Alice interrupted, "but altogether delightful nevertheless, that is, for me. Frankly, Miss Ruxton, I've been hoping to find you ever since. Won't you sit down for a little friendly talk?" Thurley followed to the corner where the older woman led, but was halted in the act of turning a chair about to face her visitor. "Oh, sit here on the davenport with me," said Alice engagingly. "I might as well tell you that I like you at once, and have it over. I've really come back to make a proposition." Thurley smiled, she hardly knew why. Her customary ease of manner returned with the smile as she took the seat denoted. "I'm not in the least a literary person, if it's anything more on books." She knew intuitively it was not concerning books that Alice Van Kirk had appeared. Vaguely she wondered what this woman of the world imagined concerning herself and Robley Stuyvesant. She, a mere amanuensis; he, the probable scion of an old and wealthy family, and the pair of them seen in his automobile, returning from who might say where? An aspect of dread, the dread of being possibly misunderstood, assailed her unexpectedly. It had never even occurred to her mind before. "Oh, books," said Alice, with an eloquent gesture of depreciation. "Do I look like that in the least?" Thurley smiled. "Oh, that sort of genius sometimes runs in families." "Infests them, you mean, my dear, but the Major is only my uncle. Let's be perfectly candid, you and I. First, I may as well confess, I know all about your meeting with Robley Stuyvesant last Saturday afternoon. He told me, of course. He doesn't know who you are in the least, thanks to your innate ladyhood. I can also readily understand that you hardly wish him to discover." Thurley flushed anew. "Oh, Not because of anything. Dear child, can't you trust me to understand? And no less than yourself, I prefer he should not know. Thurley was thoroughly puzzled. Her natural wonder was what Robley Stuyvesant could possibly be to Alice Van Kirk, and why she should come here to-day. She could only echo, "You prefer he should not know?" "Exactly. Now comes my proposition. I want you to come to my house, live with me, become my protégé, and meet him and all my friends on a social equality, immediately, at least by the end of the week." Thurley could scarcely credit her senses. "But, Mrs. Van Kirk, I know you don't understand it, of course, naturally. Why I should wish it, but what possible advantage I hope to derive from such an arrangement. But I told you I meant to be frank." She paused to lean forward and take the girl's soft hand in her own. "I need you very much indeed, and I rather hope you need me. Before you say anything at all, I wish to assure you there will be no dubious conditions, no string to the offer I am making. Candidly, I require a magnet, such a magnet as all the gold in the world may never be, a living, radiant magnet to brighten my home, to draw success and interest about me, such a magnet as you, my dear, would supply. I shall wish to treat you precisely as I might a younger sister, just come out, and would exact only a promise that no matter what might be conjectured as to whence you came, you divulge nothing to the world, assert nothing, deny nothing, and agree not to marry or to promise yourself in marriage for at least a year from our association." More and more Thurley's bewilderment increased. "But I can't in the least understand your motive," she confessed. "What could I possibly do that would repay you for your venture?" "Oh, dear child, you can wear gorgeous jewels, furs, and gowns like a princess. You can go with me everywhere, help me entertain, fill my hollow house with the people I wish to attract, give me the things I most desire, and better your fortunes by the process." Thurley shook her head gravely. "I don't see why you think so, Mrs. Van Kirk. I have never had that sort of education." "But you've always been popular?" "Oh, well, a little with the college boys, I suppose. I hoped so, thought so once." "I was certain of that from the first," said Alice decisively. "My dear, that is all I desire." Thurley looked at her quickly, a light of girlish inquiry burning in her eyes. "Do you mean you would wish me to attract a lot of men?" "Men, of course, men, and women of the social set that once paid me tribute slavishly, and now, well, things are different now. I am no longer novel, I suppose. Perhaps I'm too respectable, but you could help me bring them back. Oh, all of it nicely, my dear, nothing dubious. I said before, and I repeat, I wish you to occupy just such a place as I'd give to a younger sister of whom I could always be proud and fond. Doesn't that clear away your doubts? Heavens, I haven't the slightest thought that I might be misunderstood." Thurley burned a warmer colour. "But you can see how strange it seems to me." "Why, yes, child, I see it perfectly. That's why I'm going to ask you to think it over first. I asked the Major to bring you home to dine with me tonight, but perhaps you'd rather go in the car with me. Only he might tell you all about me, as he told me a little of you. I want you to know there is nothing sinister behind my offer, nothing you may not accept with pride and honour. There are elements of business to it, of course, for I expect you to make my existence much more happy, as I should hope to make yours more bright and promising, that's all. I am dying to make the fairy-like transformation on a girl already lovely, and surely you are not without ambition." Thurley smiled. "It is a fairy story, isn't it? The way it comes and all. It sounds too good for New York City, shall I say? And coming like this to me. Fate, my dear, believe me. How otherwise should you happen to be sitting in the park when Robley Stuyvesant comes along and breaks his big strong wrist?" Thurley coloured an exquisite tint. "I hope his wrist is better. I mean, it was really terrible." Alice arched her brows. "He called the incident a favour of the gods. He is nearly insane to meet his princess again." The red fairly surged to Thurley's cheeks at this, and down all her ivory neck. "I'd be expected to meet him, as you said?" "Naturally. His enthusiasm, I confess, incubated my resolve to find you if I could. But don't forget what I named as my conditions. I couldn't permit you to engage yourself for a year, not even to Robley. After all that romantic meeting, you see, I am very scheming after all." "Oh!" Alice rose. "Will you come tonight with the Major or with me?" Thurley's excitement returned. "Did I promise to come?" "To look us over, certainly. Wear anything you like, my dear. We three shall be alone." She held out her hand as before, and smiled with a charm of her own that Thurley knew was honest. "You can think things over rapidly, from all I learn of your character. Perhaps you can give me your answer tonight." Thurley's smile was a trifle timid. "Perhaps." The older woman quickly took her other hand. There was something wistful in the look she bestowed on the eyes so deeply brown. "If you make up your mind to come, you'll call me Alice." "If I come?" Alice gave added pressure to her hands. "I think you'll be a little more comfortable if you come with the Major," she concluded. "We'll consider that arranged. Till then, my dear, good-bye." "Good-bye," said Thurley, and followed to the door. Alice turned and kissed her suddenly. "There, I simply couldn't help it." She laughed, her own face flushing girlishly. "I know we are going to be friends." Then she went, and Thurley stood there marvelling, a thrill suddenly creeping to her heart. End of chapter 7.